Hello and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most dashing work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse,
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
and we are back to talk about some more chapters from Dash to Pieces. But before we dash into that, let's quickly touch on something else, because we've just made, in one of our other shows, Elliot, a very special announcement.
Yes, so for those of you who don't listen to Pace, this is us telling you that at the end of Pale, we're going to be doing another big end of story live stream.
Yes, we did one when we finished going through Pact for Deep Impact. That was a 24-hour live stream. And now, when Pale finishes, we will be doing a special live stream called All Packed Up 2, All Paled Up Beyond the Pale. It's going to be a 25-hour live stream. It's going to feature guests. It's going to feature segments. It's for charity. I didn't mention that in Pace, but again, it's a charity live stream. We're doing it for charity. We'll be raising money for a charity. There's all kinds of great things that are going to be coming up, and we're going to kind of tease you each and every week with some of those fun things that are coming up in this very show.
Hopefully we haven't started too early. I'm just
Yeah,
worried.
it's worth pointing out, we don't know when Pale is going to end, so we're kind of like planning this 25-hour live stream without really having a solid date for when it's going to happen. So, maybe it won't be for like 3 years. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. Well, it won't be that, but
That would be wild.
That would be wild. But yeah, we kind of can sense that the story is getting maybe to a point where it's resolving, so we thought it would be the right time to announce it. Should we, I guess, since we're just kind of announcing this today, we won't get into a segment, but instead we'll just touch on the fact that, similar to the All Packed Up first live stream, there's going to be all kinds of like rewards and stuff for people who donate money to charity. We will be putting ourselves through a series of physical and mental torments, as well as there's some nice things in there as well. Like positive things. It's not just all negative things. So you can decide if you want to be a nice spirit or a mean spirit to us. One of the ones that I'm the most excited about is at a set number of donations, like after we've raised a set amount of money, we will give you the option to, you being the audience, the option to vote on these rituals that we've got. We're planning a number of possible rituals themed after things that have happened in Pale, rituals that have happened in Pale, and we think they will all be so delightful. I don't want to spoil any of them because they're so great to think about, but I just kind of want to get people's mental juices flowing of like, what could these rituals possibly look like? And they're going to be awesome.
It's our attempts to recreate some of the rituals we've seen in Pale. And obviously those of you who came to All Packed Up will remember we did some similar stuff in that.
Yeah.
And from memory, those were received very positively. So we're gonna come back and do those.
Yeah.
We've also got like tons of new stuff that we're doing. We really want to come to this one with fresh energy. So we've got stuff like we're gonna have like a prize for the person who donates the most over the stream, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's going to be all kinds of awesome stuff. So stay tuned for more details on that, because we're really, really thrilled for it. We're genuinely very excited to do this very silly thing again. So stay tuned, I suppose.
Yeah. But with that out of the way, should we dive into our chapters?
Well, not dive into, Elliot. We're going to dash into these chapters.
I specifically did not say that.
Starting with Dash to Pieces 11.3, we're with Avery again. So yeah, just to kind of refresh people's brains, at the end of 11.2, Matthew agree. Oh, sorry, no, I'm getting 11.2 and 11.3 mixed up. At the end of 11.2, they came to Edith and Matthew, and 11.3 is the start of this interrogation. The Sable Prince kind of starts exerting his influence, I guess you'd call it, over Edith and Matthew's house, while Avery pushes for some lenience. God, the vibe of this is very interesting, isn't it? Just kind of as an overall thing for this chapter and the next one, the Sable Prince is very interesting, and it's very weird to kind of feel out where we think he actually stands. He's like, notionally on the side of the Kenneteers here, but it seems like he's also completely willing to turn on them if things don't go well. It's this really weird vibe. I definitely was left in 11.2 with this feeling of like, oh, that was easy. They've just caught Edith. But
Yeah.
now, as we get into the actual interrogation, it feels like they're still in a position where one wrong move will allow Edith to basically completely destroy them.
Yeah, and we'll get into that like at various points. I mean, the thing about both of these chapters is they're essentially the conviction and interrogation of Edith, like
Yeah.
all
The
out of
trial of
order.
Edith James. I've been
Yeah.
referring to them as in my head.
Um. So there's going to be like various ducking back and forth between concepts. I think in this episode, but yeah, I agree. I don't think it was until the end of my second read that I think I really started to comprehend what I felt is going on with the Sable.
Mm,
So we'll get to that later, but like right from the start, the vibe you really get from him here, like as you sort of said, he's coming in, he like all the blades of grass in Matt and Edith's lawn start to turn into like actual blades,
yeah.
and he's kind of doing all this very aggressive stuff, and you're sort of like, oh, okay, this guy's here. He wants results. Like,
Yeah.
um, we'll get later to the price that you mentioned that the Kenneteers are paying for this, but yeah, like right from the get go, where the Kenneteers sort of feel like they're trying to be a bit calmer about it, the Sable is really sort of coming in this very dominating way, and he wants to see results.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something else, like when he sort of first shows up, and like I guess I was curious what like we talked about this last week. I think like what sort of death does he represent?
Mm,
Um, and like seeing him here doing this more violent stuff sort of got me thinking. Like, it reminded me of that time. Remember, like it's something the story's talked about a bunch where. When Lucy brought John to the Blue Heron Institute, and Toad Swallow was like, "You know what bringing him means, right?"
yeah. Yeah.
Like, I couldn't help but think, like, we should probably apply that to the Sable. Like, they chose the Sable over the Alabaster or the Aurum, right?
Mm.
Um, so that like that feels like it's saying something about what they think they need here and what this covers, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's the vibe that it feels like the Sable wants to bring to this is a judicial execution, right?
Yeah.
Um, and obviously they don't want that, so they kind of try and tweak that a bit. But yeah, it's very much it feels like destruction.
Yeah, and because like I guess he's the closest thing conceptually to like this is a murder investigation, right? So it's like, like I guess that's why it had to be the Sable. But
Yeah,
I mean, the other thing that jumped out to me as I was sort of trying to put this all together is like obviously he's affiliated with death, and then I was like, oh, hey, what's death called in our five pillars of humanity? Hey, that's Pale, like the title of the
the
book.
name of the story.
It
Yeah,
probably had to be him.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, I suppose as we go in, we'll get into more. Like, I feel like he definitely represents something over these next two chapters during this
Mm,
interrogation. But it's just interesting to think about from the Kenneteers' perspective why it wasn't even really argued. It was just like, oh yeah, we've got to go to the Sable
mm,
for this.
yeah, yeah. We're kind of seeding a lot of thoughts that we're going to touch over the course of these two chapters. But you're right. It's like they're chapters that are very much interlinked and very much they feel like they can't quite be separated. Some of the ideas within them are unfold over the course of these two chapters.
Well, and the two chapters also twist in and around themselves, coming back to points. Like this is possibly the most I've ever struggled to like get a feeling like I've cohesively put the points I want to make where I want to make them. Um,
Mm,
like I don't always feel like I do a good job of that anyway, but particularly with these chapters, it was like sitting down trying to do that. I was like, I don't know where to talk about this because it's relevant here and here and here.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I wonder if Walbo intentionally sets up pairs of chapters so that it's easier for us to group them when we do our discussions.
I doubt
I
it.
doubt it too, but this
Oh,
one definitely feels like, yeah.
there's definitely been pairs of chapters where we've had the break in the middle, and I've been like, "Oh, it would have been really cool to talk
Oh
about,
yeah, you're right.
that
Yeah.
chapter and this chapter." Like the breaks have definitely been in the wrong spots for us at times, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, just one last side note here before we get into the house. There's this great moment where like Matthew at this stage is still very much just confused and alarmed. And he sort of, turns to John and he's like, "You have your gun out," and John just responds, "One of my guns,"
Mhm.
which is just what a badass response. Um, doesn't help with what I'm talking about with the Sable feeling like he's escalating things because John's just turned himself into a living threat. Um, but I just really enjoy that line.
It's a good one, isn't it? I like that John is kind of acknowledging, but also saying, things can get worse.
Yeah, exactly. He's not denying it. He's not disagreeing with it. It's like it's a really subtle threat, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So yeah, the trial begins with Judge Sable presiding. First, the kind of terms are set for the trial, I suppose.
Yeah, and this is like this huge next chunk of this chapter is really the point where they quickly decide they actually do sort of need to prove that it's justified that they're coming after Edith. And this is the point where I think Edith actually does a pretty good job arguing for herself. Like we're going to talk a lot about the claims they make about her and the evidence she levels back at them, and I think she actually kind of feels like she's coming out on top.
Yeah.
But the first thing they do when they come down here is they, like, take everything that's candle related or feels like it's hers,
Mm.
and, like, I get mechanically why they had to do that, but it sets such a shitty tone for this, doesn't it? That it's like, "We need to remove anything that fuels yourself," is basically how they frame it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it plays back into the overarching vibe of the first part of this chapter, where like Edith is defending herself, and you're like, okay, yes, I get that, and I get why, but it's just so clearly, it just feels like bullshit. Like it feels like the fact that we have to have a trial feels bullshit to me because it's just kind of like um, we know Edith has lied, and it's this vibe of like Edith defending herself just feels so like slimy to me. I don't know. The fact that she isn't just willing to say, I don't know. I guess I had kind of had this hope in my head of Edith being like, no, okay, you're right. I had been misleading you, and here's why. It's this really good reason that I have.
Yeah.
Like I kind of wanted there to be some amicable way to resolve this. It just feels like things have gone so far at this point.
Well, I almost feel like that's what the Kenneteers are giving her the chance to do here,
Yes.
because it's not until the very end of this chapter that they actually come in with their smoking guns.
Yeah.
And we'll get to all that. But like you're right, there's like the Kenneteers are kind of offering their weakest arguments at the start, and it
Yeah,
gives the
they
sense
want
that
Edith to be able to not get into this situation. And the fact that her response, so like the tone immediately becomes hostile, and Edith, there's this point where she basically starts. I'll read the quote out. If you want to twist around this call for counsel to bind me for extra days, that reflects who you are and what you're doing, Edith interrupted, voice heated. We shouldn't have picked you three. And this is Edith coming out of the gate, like defining, effectively trying to turn the terms to her agreement, right? Throwing in statements like, we
yeah,
shouldn't have picked you three to try and undermine their authority as she's interrupting them. And stuff like this that feels very like, oh, we've entered the part where there's a battle of words between
yeah,
these two. Like there's no moment where Edith tries to justify her actions. She comes out of the gate antagonistic, and it just feels, it's sad. It's so sad. Like there's a tragic tone to this, to the entirety of this chapter. Putting aside this thing that happens at the end of 11.3, which is fucking tragic, but the entirety of this chapter is just sad.
yeah. Well, and especially because like that quote you read out where she's like making out like the Kenneteers are twisting her call for counsel. We know that's not what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like what the Sable says is you don't get legal counsel, and Lucy's actually like, oh no, hold the phone. That's bullshit. And Lucy
Yeah.
actually sort of stands up for it, and then the Sable's the one who's sort of like, oh well, if she needs it, then it's going to be like 2 days, and we'll need to bind her, and then it's like
The,
Edith's the one who's like, "Oh fuck you, Kenneteers." It's like, no, that's all the Sable. I like you are not being fair to the Kenneteers at all right
Yeah,
now.
and like we know it's bullshit, and Edith knows it's bullshit. Like
Yeah.
the most annoying thing about it is the Kenneteers are trying to take the high road as much as they can here, and they're doing
Mm.
so good at it. And Edith immediately starts to go low, like without even a consideration, and it just feels so disappointing. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I like okay, it's just because I think there's a fair argument for them. Like as I said, they came in here before she even gets angry at them. The first thing they do is come into her house and strip the room of everything that's connected to her in order to like make sure she doesn't feel at home. Like it
Mhm.
it's the police coming into your house and like fucking up all your shit, right? Like it's
Mm,
they've intentionally made sure that she can't feel like or they don't want her to have tools. They're worried, all these things are secret weapons or whatever. But it also achieves the effect of like isolating her and disrupting her sense of like safety in the space.
yeah.
And yeah, they've got like John and Tash fucking standing guard. Obviously, the Sable's here. Like it is, I think perhaps unavoidably like an antagonistic confrontation even before Edith meets them back with that energy.
Yeah, look, I don't. Yes, obviously it's antagonistic and it kind of has to be, but I do think they're doing their best to make it. Uh, it kind of has elements of it that almost feel like an intervention at the start, where it's like
Yeah.
they've gathered people that she knows and her friends, and they've got Matthew and they've got John, and they're genuinely trying to start out with this thing of like, let's talk about this, let's dive into this, and they effectively want her to be able to contradict them, and she just can't, and she takes it to this antagonistic place. Like, yes, they come in and it's a bit of them kind of walking over her territory, but what can they do? They're doing their best to make it not that, and she refuses to let that happen.
Yeah. Well, like, so to dive into the first, like, sort of, like, charge, I
Yeah,
suppose, and her
yeah.
defense of it, they basically argue that uh, she withheld information from them. And her argument against that here is basically, yeah, well, everyone else does that too. Um,
Mm,
and this was the part that really gave me the vibes that I feel like we've almost been talking around, which is remember when Verona and Lucy were getting questioned by Ray about Alexander's death,
mm,
and Lucy sort of had that moment where she pulled out the card of like, I've learnt not to trust authority because like for people like me, it can't be trusted.
mm.
Um, and there was this like moment where it was sort of like, well, I mean, yes, that is correct, that's true, Lucy. Like, I get it, but also to be fair, this time you did do it.
Yeah.
And that's very much the same energy Edith has here, where
Yeah.
she's making these claims that they're being aggressive and being unfair, and it's kind of like, I mean, that
Yeah,
situation
but you're
totally happens.
guilty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that situation totally happens in this world. You're right. That isn't what it is here, though. And like this is the whole problem with all this, and this is really what these two chapters are about. What we're going to be talking in circles around for the next hour and a bit, I imagine, is how do you balance the fact that like sometimes they're going to need this force and this ability to corner Edith so they can get the truth out of her if she's hostile and not going to cooperate, versus making sure you're not going to infringe on her freedoms and her rights if she is innocent. Like that's this
Yeah.
constant like juggling act that society needs to do. How can you make sure you have the power to hurt the people or to stop the people who are being bad, but not accidentally affect people who are innocent and not take it too far against the people who are bad as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of an impossible question, right? Like, we're in
Well,
a
yeah,
privileged position to be able to look at this and say, no, they are 100% correct. And the best case scenario, the way we can kind of hand wave this away the most is say they would obviously not do any of this stuff if they weren't so sure about it. And they obviously wouldn't do any of this stuff if it hadn't come up that it was actually true and Edith was actually guilty. But that is kind of maybe a naive read in that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I trust these three to with the judicious use of power, right?
well, yeah. That's the thing. I do think they're going out of their way to make sure they're trying to be as fair as they can.
Well,
Like,
there's a line Sable says at the end of the next chapter. He says they were a lot more measured than I would have been if I
yeah,
had done this, and you're just kind of like, well, I guess, yeah, like they're doing their best.
yeah, they are. I don't know. They have their moments. There's a bit where I don't really agree with where Lucy goes that we'll talk about later. But yeah, like the vibe from this first part, like because there's another part they lay the second thing against Edith, and Edith gives this shitty answer where she's sort of like, "Oh, I might have told you about stuff eventually when it didn't matter anymore, but that's not technically against the rules or whatever." And it's like this is still that moment where it feels like at this time Edith has the upper hand, and I'm
Mm,
just like, as what's going on with knowing they've got the smoking gun in their pockets. You're sort of like, why are they doing this? And I think it's just
mm,
to like give her an opportunity to not like this is what they're constantly doing every time they don't want her to make them take it too far. And it's kind of
yeah,
like they're constantly doing is giving her a chance to work with them, and every time she doesn't, they have to escalate just like a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just sucks, but also I don't know what else
Yeah, what else can you
they
do if
can
she's not
do.
willing to work with you?
Yeah. Like there's obviously the debate later on about whether or not to bind her, and they're talking to John, and yeah, it's just sort of like they don't want to do it, but like John brings up that question, it's sort of like you have to ask yourself, like, are you okay not getting answers? And
Mm,
that's a really tough extra question here. Is like, when is it okay not to get justice? Like, when is getting the justice taking it too far and being worse than like the crime? And I don't think I think in this case you'd have to go pretty far to hit that line, but um,
yeah.
in general, it's a fair question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, yes. Sorry. So before we move on to the next bit, one last little thing which I wanted to call out. In the midst of all these arguments, they do sort of quickly get clarifications from Edith that like the black and sick dog argument, both are technically accurate. And she also mentions that when she says "I" in the body of Edith, she means like the collective Girl by Candlelight Edith spirit, which I just wanted to call out both of these things because I feel like I've constantly seen discussions and like tinfoiling regarding these two facts and
Mm,
how important they were. So it's kind of like I feel like what a lot of these chapters do is really start to nail down what I feel is like a lot of fan theorizing and arguing that's been going on. And it's really cool that like Wobbo can be tapped in to the audience to like clarify these things that feel like they've been sticking points in the fandom.
yeah, it's nice to kind of get an in-story confirmation that we're not just doing a kind of a very small little word trick to get around some of these questions.
Yeah, and that was what some of these things always felt like the black dog, sick dog thing. It came up in the story a lot as well. Like I'm not just going to lay that on people. Like that was something that came up in the story a fair number of times, and it's like, yeah, I like that it is just sort of resolved here. Is actually like, no, that wasn't the whole thing. The smoking gun's not going to be a little bit of wordplay like that.
Mm. Yeah. So yeah, Lucy kind of starts by digging into the idea of the new Carmine role and kind of the judges' roles in general. Um, it becomes clear soon that there would have been able to be some shenanigans with somebody ascending, using tricks to ascend to the Carmine throne, and then using that position of power to, absolve themselves effectively.
Yeah, and we got to talk about how funny this is because it interrupts the interrogation. There's just sort of
Mm.
this point. I can't remember exactly how it comes up, but eventually Avery just sort of turns to the Sable and is like, "Hey, actually, before we go on, the fuck do you guys do?"
Yeah.
And then Lucy sort of like picks it up from there because she wants to know as well.
And
And it
she
just like,
realizes the flaw in the system.
yeah, yeah, like Lucy definitely takes point, but I think it's Avery is the first one who just sort of like puts things on pause and it's like, "Hey, what do you guys do?" And I love this because first of all, obviously, I think everyone wanted to know this.
Mm,
Um, but secondly, like it clearly interrupts the interrogation. Like it's this weird, this is one of those things that makes it really hard for us to try and structure our episode today because it just
mm,
juts right in the middle of the interrogation.
yeah.
And it reminded me of I felt a bit the same way when they were interrogating McKay in this same basement. Um, and they sort of started talking to him, and then it got interrupted when Lucy was sort of like she extracted that thing from Matt, Edith, and Toadswallow about how she wanted recognition that they were doing this for them.
Mm,
And it was like I appreciate that these three always have that ability to sort of take that step back and make sure they're analyzing like the broader picture. They don't lose the forest for the trees.
yeah, yeah. It's a good quality for sure because it would be easy to get very distracted and just kind of swept up in what they're doing.
Especially like the Sable is kind of pushing them to do that in a lot of ways. A lot of his
Yes.
statements sort of end with him bringing it back to the case and they go back to the judge stuff again. Like it- the Sable is here to get his result. He wants his conviction.
Yeah.
And they're the ones constantly sort of not just advocating for mercy and for Edith to be okay, even if she's guilty, but yeah, to take that step back and develop a better understanding of how
Of the
this all fits
systems at
together as a
play.
whole so they know
Yeah.
they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Diving into this judge stuff, it's pretty, I think, hard to follow.
Yeah.
Um,
His
but
answers are not.
they're not super, yeah, exactly.
It's like reading fairy stuff. I was just
Yeah,
like, I'm
yeah.
lost.
But, we obviously kind of know the basic role of the judges by this point in the story. The thing that was interesting to me about it was, like, the how the judges act is kind of a weird mix of like they, you know, they being autonomous in what they actually can do, the decisions they can make, with a combination of this kind of like instinctual sense of justice, similar to John's description of his instinctual kind of understanding of the rules of being another, which is a comparison they make in the story, which I just found fascinating. Like they do have this instinctual sense of justice, but they can also just kind of make whatever decisions they want.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's like half it just naturally happens and it's the letter of the law and that's just the way things are. So it doesn't even need to be thought about. And then half it's just entirely wildly open to our discretion
Yeah.
to do whatever the fuck we want. It's crazy. And like it almost gave me this sense like we talk later about like who the new Carmine could be and blah
Yeah.
blah blah. And it was just sort of like so much of what the judge says here is sort of like, oh, we have like this instinctive knowledge of what the others are doing and we don't usually disagree with each other, and that just like if these four systems are meant to interact like that in this way, that like I kind of get the vibe in this world that that would mean, based on what the four judges are and what they think, this equilibrium between the four of them is reached, which means if you just get an absolute shit cunt in one of the roles, it's going to drift all of them in that direction a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, like so I don't know. I tried to sort of summarize what I understood like the judges' roles to be.
Mm,
Um, I feel like one of the big ones that's brought up is that they're responsible for when people like John Point pop up, them just being like naturally bound to the seal already,
mm,
which is kind of crazy because it's basically like the other thing he brings up is that like technically lords, practitioners, and others are obligated to enforce the seal at the earliest opportunity, which is just like this is literally like a cult. Like you're forced to indoctrinate every newly born other that you find.
hmm. That's pretty fun.
And then yeah, and again, there's lots of talks about how lords effectively act the same as the judges, but in their cases, there's like even more uh, discretion. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the judges naturally drift towards these four roles and balance things out, whereas like a lord takes over a spot and they can do whatever the fuck they want
Mm,
from the sounds of it. Like that's crazy.
yeah. Seems kind of wild, but we haven't seen any lords, so who knows?
Yeah. And then the other big sort of role that they had that I quickly wanted to jump on is um within their domain they sort of have control over the ratios of others that spawn according to that. So like,
Mm,
it's mentioned the Carmine favored more natural beasts over like abyssal things, which sounds like a good call based on what we've seen of the abyss so far.
mhm,
Um, but it just like that just sort of reminded me, like the comparison that jumped to mind is like when I think you both see this in shows like The Good Wife, where it was like, that there'll be a DA who's like, I'm going to be strict on like this type of crime,
mm,
and you sort of end up changing the vibe of your jurisdiction when you cause the like police and legal system to focus on a particular, like the Carmine has this naturally, or this natural way of controlling what sort of violent crime there's going to be through that passive effect, like in a really tangible way.
mm. I like that.
Like yeah, it's just I feel like that's a power they have that probably goes underrated in general.
Mm. Yeah, the idea of them choosing to be hard on a certain type of crime, leading to crazy imbalances of the system in that sense. You're right. I think that definitely is something that has a bit more importance than we might have thought.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like especially when we're thinking about who might take over, like this is one of those things that seems to fit in that category of just wildly at their own discretion. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously kind of struggled with the problem that some types of others seem to just be existing at the cost of innocence, and there's not really any way to get around that. Maybe the way to get around it is if we have a judge that kind of disincentivizes those types of others from popping up.
yeah, they do say that one of their roles is to like protect innocence, so there's got to be limits on how
Yeah, true.
wild they can get. But no, you're right. Like there's almost assuredly wiggle room for them there. Um, like the TLDR of this whole segment was just basically, like Lucy sort of nails onto it. Like there's this is a system that has just outgrown like what is meant to be to a ridiculous extent. Like every time the Sable sort of falls back on the hard rules, and they're called out for bullshit. He's like, yeah, well, Bronze Age, right? Like that's what we're doing, and it's like, well, don't. But, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, Lucy clearly taps into these ideas that the system is obviously flawed, a bit to being gamed. I love the Sable's response is like, well, but we are the system that is correcting itself. And I think that's just such a funny and impossible to defeat argument that I found very hilarious.
yeah, but no. So I'm gonna call bullshit on it because the only reason he's here is because they asked him to come. Like,
Yeah.
if Edith had gotten her wish and the Kenneteers had been shit or dead or whatever, he wouldn't be here. Like,
Yeah, but the universe made it happen so that the Kentis weren't shit, and now he is here, and the system's correcting itself.
I mean,
Elliot, you
okay, no, I
can't
see what you're
argue.
saying.
You can't argue against it
I see what you're
because
saying. Yeah, no.
the Sable's response of "We're fixing it right now, so clearly the system works" is like undefeatable in such a smarmy and shit way.
Oh, and especially like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to get into this too much, but it just reminds me of conversations I had with people, uh, in 2016.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Um, where there's just this almost sense of like the Sable being like, well, yeah, but I mean, a dickhead couldn't just be made one of the judges and fuck all the shit up. Like nobody who would abuse the power like that is really likely to get in, so it's not really a concern.
Too real, too real, Elliot.
But
Yeah.
that's what he's saying.
No, you're right. It is. Like, oh, there are checks and balances in place to stop this from happening. So don't worry, it can't happen.
Yeah, like, and then you ask him about the checks and balances, and he's like, "Oh, it's just it's probably not going to happen though."
Yeah.
But yeah, um, another little detail that comes up here, like they sort of say, "Oh, usually it's the alabasters who get killed because they don't
Mm,
really fight back because they're the deer,
mm.
they're the innocent." And then there's a little throwaway line, "Hey, yeah, but the Carmine didn't really fight back," and I was like, "That's a really good point." Like, she just fucking
Let herself get
waltzed into
eaten.
Kennet
Mm.
and did a like I think as you called it in our first episode, a Monty Burns like death fall.
Yeah.
What is up with that?
So maybe, actually, the Carmine Beast is still alive, and it was the Alabaster who was killed.
I mean, like it's better than any explanation I've got. Like,
So here's how it works. Okay. Okay, Glamour.
sorry, I just want to point out like our editing process cuts out really long pauses. There was a good 5 seconds between
Yeah, no, I had to.
Ruben's
This
words
is
there.
a on the fly prediction here, so I've got to just kind of make it make sense. All right, Elliot, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
How come when the Carmine Beast died, all the Carmine influence, e.g., violence, etc., got worse, got bigger? Now, people have offered explanations for this in story, but it's never quite sat right with me. Surely, if the Carmine Beast dies, the area of influence would wane rather than strengthen. Here's the explanation, Elliot. The Carmine Beast is still alive. The Carmine Beast killed the Alabaster Doe, and working with her, her second in command, Marisica,
Yeah.
used glamour to make it seem like the Alabaster was the Carmine Beast, and has kind of been working to subsume the other judges, and that was the first step, and that's the story.
Again, another good 5 seconds there.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not the stupidest idea. I do think the reasons in the story we've been given for why violence is getting worse make a lot of sense, and I'd be pretty surprised if they all were bullshit.
Or were the opposite of what is actually happening. Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just this feels to me like one of those things where when the story's over and we've got all the information, we're gonna look back at this and be like, oh, obviously this was our hint at X.
Mm,
But right now, I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know what it means that the Carmine didn't fight back. I just know it means something.
yeah, definitely means something.
Um, and just to quickly touch on, things kind of get back to the interrogation of Edith here, and they sort of turn to this topic of Edith not giving them votes and stuff. And you know what? I think I'm actually going to side with Edith on this one. Like, even after the fact, I think her argument of them not being around for most of the votes is fairly valid. And also, I think even when Miss was still around, were getting our heads around the concept that this was a place that was meant to be free of practitioners, and they're here mostly as a symbolic thing. Like, I don't know, maybe giving them collectively one vote or something. I don't know. I think Edith has a bit of a point here.
Yeah, okay. I mean, to me, the vibe is like it doesn't matter what points Edith is making because she's guilty and she will admit it soon enough.
Yeah, but just because she's guilty of that thing, it doesn't make like other like this is going to be the thing. I'm sure when we get the full motives of the other villains unmasked, it's going to be like, yeah, you're shit cunts, but like, it- there's that doesn't mean all their points are invalid.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. I think the
we'll
way the
see.
Kenneteers are fighting for their votes here, I actually think another other in town could make a pretty compelling case to me as for why they probably shouldn't have full votes each in a lot of
Mm,
things.
yeah, yeah. I think that is a fair enough point in isolation.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
just think like especially this is that point where Edith feels like she's actually doing quite well at defending herself, and this was like the third beat here where I was sort of like, oh shit, she's actually really getting them on this, and they're about to flip the table on her, obviously, but um, yeah, in this point where it is meant to sort of seem like Edith is kind of winning, I it stands out to me that her third argument is really the one where I was like, yeah, actually, I think like overall she has a point here.
mm, yeah, fair enough. Um, oh, something else that happens here. I'm glad that Lucy gets a chance to point out to Matthew how Ken is not as great of a pick as he sometimes somehow thought that he was. Like, I feel bad for Matthew, but I'm glad that this is being pointed out to him. And also, we get confirmation later that Edith has been manipulating him around some of these important decisions. So hopefully, he's not as hopeless and and unaware as he might have seemed sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think Lucy kind of bites his head off a bit with this one, whereas I feel like this is, I guess this is just me, but this is like one of those Connor's dad situations where like Matthew's just a bit of an idiot and
Yeah.
like he just doesn't quite see it, and like yeah, the second it's pointed out to him, I feel like he's gonna get it. It's the same in some of the emails. Like it's just like the unfortunate truth is he sort of needed this explained to him because he wasn't going to see it himself where he is now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know. Obviously, yeah. This is the least of Matthew's having things pointed out to him moments in the end of it.
Yeah. So yeah, the trio start hitting on questions that Edith can't answer, and silence starts to be pretty damning here. But Matthew still asks them not to bind her. Um, they take a break, and Avery decides it's the perfect time to start dropping some bombshells.
I mean, technically, she doesn't decide it. Snowdrop does,
Yeah, true.
which is a great little moment. But I, I, I I love how this bombshell is traced right back to the start of the story. Like Avery brings up that this was part of her thinking
Mm,
like in the awakening ritual and like thinking back, right, like the way the story made me think right back to that time made me think about so much of the early story, and I was just thinking like this does explain a lot about how Avery, like her mum being away all the time and having this knowledge in the back of her head that she might have to move to Thunder Bay in
mm,
a couple of months. Like you can see why, with all the problems she was having with connections and friendships and stuff, that would exacerbate it so much. Like
mm,
having had this knowledge in her head, like and yeah, hesitation around joining the Kenneteers and stuff. Like this just would have been, yeah, like I don't know, like the fucking cherry on top of the cake that was like all her anxiety and suffering around this.
mm.
I
Yeah.
can't think of what the negative version of that analogy is, so I'm just gonna have to go with yeah, cherry on top.
The final straw.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. No, not the
Um,
final straw, but I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we were wrong. Oh, I was wrong that it was Grumble related. Turns out
Yeah,
it's
same.
Avery's parents, uh, physically separating, but seemingly not emotionally separating. Um, it feels a little like it feels like a first step to them separating, but I guess it's not. Kind of explicitly, Avery confirms that it's not. But
I
yeah,
mean,
so mm,
so I it depends on the relationship. Like some relationships would be fine with this.
yeah.
Something that has always defined Avery's parents' relationship from her perspective has been the fact that they're always there for each other and like will back each other up sort of verbally and like physically, they're often touching. I think she's made notes of couples doing that a lot, including her parents. So, I mean,
Mm,
that's obviously biased through Avery's perspective, but I guess I'd be worried. I mean, we know physicality is a part of their relationship because they've got a billion kids, but um, I don't know. Like, yeah, not for every relationship is this a deal breaker, but for this one, I'm a little worried.
mm, yeah, yeah. There's also the thought of like, obviously, it seems like the parents have said, no, we're not like splitting up. We're going to have a long distance relationship. And Avery is taking that to heart, but we don't know what's going on inside their head, right? Avery is not a primary source on that. So,
Yeah, true. I mean, I believe that's what they mean.
yeah, true. Yeah, sure.
I've just speaking from experience here. You can mean that and not do a good job of following through on it. I mean, speaking of, Verona's mum is gone in these
mm,
2 chapters. She's gone home,
yeah.
and there's very big like Verona's mum's vibes. I think from their decision here.
Mm,
I feel like she'd sat in a similar space in my head to them in a way for a while, but I never felt confident in that link. But I feel like this really sort of starts to clinch it for me, where it's like Avery frames it here. Her parents are choosing their careers over their family, and I can't even bring myself to fully condemn them for that. To be honest, the way they're doing it, like they are trying to make sure the kids are taken care of a lot better than Sylvia ever did.
mm,
Um, but yeah, it's that same sort of thing where, yeah, they're just picking themselves and their career over the family, and that sucks on a level.
mm, mm, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the kind of purpose of this being brought up is Avery and Verona have escapes. Um, Lucy does not, or not
Mm.
a clean one at least, which I don't know is uncomfortable at the very least.
Yeah, especially as the person who's the least likely to run anyway. Like, if I had to pick a Kenneteer, I was worried about, not ceding ground when they needed to. It's got to be Lucy, whose whole thing is not ceding ground. Um, so the fact that she's also the one who literally doesn't have an escape hatch to really think about, that doesn't tear her mum's like whole thing apart. Yeah, like I think it's fair cause for concern.
Mm, yeah, yeah. We'll have to see. It's the kind of thing where it feels like a setup for a future conflict.
Oh yeah, we saw it in 14.12, right? This is
Yeah,
what
well,
Malia was talking about.
God. Okay. So yeah, Avery at this point takes out the syringe, and Matthew struggles to find a way to justify it, but eventually it all comes crashing down.
Oh, it hurts. Like it, Matthew is sort of slowly descending this. Like he's, you can see these little nicks in his confidence happening throughout the chapter, but for like the whole thing, he's still very much like, I've got Edith's back.
Yeah,
I think the worst he ever gets in terms of not backing Edith is sort of being, it depends on one thing, and then they pull out the syringe, and in about 30 seconds he goes from
yeah,
like never letting her down to like, he just sort of straight up says, bind her, like do whatever the fuck, and like the point where he tells them to bind her, you're just like, oh, this is like,
it's done. Yeah,
fuck yeah.
it's pretty
um
heartbreaking.
that line hits so fucking hard, and Wabo knew it. He ended the chapter on it. Like that is just, oh, what a moment.
Yeah,
It hurts.
it's kind of unimaginable, this level of betrayal. And
Yeah,
it makes me like Matthew is still going to be a character after this. You know, like
yeah.
I'm nervous to see who he is after this reveal because I like him.
Well, yeah, and especially with the like memory of in 10.z, that ability he has to just cut out the parts of himself that will feel bad about things when he's angry,
Mm,
so he can kind of like John Wick out and then return to being a nice person.
mm,
Um, I don't know what his capacity to do that sort of thing is with the doom in him. But
mm-hmm.
that's even worse because it's like, oh yeah, shit. Now we've got this dude who's fucking lost everything. He's probably going to be emotionally unstable as fuck, and he's sitting on this like all powerful doom.
Yeah,
Like,
that is also the doom for the person who has just betrayed him.
yeah, like it. Oh yeah, like I guess there was the knowledge that the doom would start to dissipate and he would start to overpower it without Edith giving him the injections. So it's like, it's not like there's a path. There is a path forward for him.
Mm,
But like, it's very conceivable that he's going to do something crazy, and he has the tools to to make that something crazy very big in the
yeah.
near future.
Mm-hmm. Pretty worrying stuff. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we will see.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I just want to bring up, like with him, is always like, because the thing that's so fucked up about this, like, and the reason it hits you so hard is because this all happened because he was a good person. Like he
Yeah,
found this spirit, and rather than extinguish it, he decided to nurture it. He helped her grow. He's done all this other stuff for Kennet, and she just like she did this to him. Like it's so like
it's really fucked up.
like yeah,
Yeah.
this is his reward for being a good person. Like you start to wonder how this world became so toxic, and like Matthew's the walking fucking example of that. Like he
Mm.
he did the right thing in so many ways, and this is where it got him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? It's fucked up.
Yeah. Um. Before we leave this chapter, though, one last thing. Avery and Snowdrop. There's like a couple of moments in this chapter where Avery leans on Snowdrop for support and all that, but like something I just sort of noticed throughout this is like they're a bit awkward at times, and they've actually barely hung out since they did the familiar ritual, right? Like
Mm.
I suppose Avery says, she cuddles with her and stuff at home. I think she's mentioned that, like she can have her on her bed at home, but just with all the like with Avery being concussed and then with like Snowdrop running around with the goblins so much, I feel like we hear a lot more about them being apart than we hear about them being together.
Mm.
Um, and like especially after last week, Avery being our like arrivals and departures person. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just stood out to me that they seem to almost be further apart since doing the ritual than before it.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting. I wonder if it's just we haven't had time to dive into to have any nice moments, I guess, between them.
Yeah, that's true. It's just I guess I've still got that anxiety. Like 11.2 really cemented this idea in my head that like Avery was not in a good place, and that kind of
Mm.
got pushed under the rug in this chapter just by all the Edith stuff. Like, obviously we dealt with like Avery's divorce and things for a bit of it, but like 11.2 hit me a lot harder with this sense of like Avery was adrift. And so like I guess this is almost more of a point to tie into what 11.2 was talking about than 11.3 really. Um, it doesn't feel like Avery has any anchors, and I'm just surprised at how little Snowdrop feels like one at the moment.
Mm. Interesting. Worrying. I hadn't kind of pulled that out, but you're right. And
Yeah.
that's makes me nervous.
Like it's not nothing. They're still like quite tight, but it feels like less tight than they were before the ritual, and that confuses the
Mm.
shit out of me.
Yeah. Whew, yeah. Well, let's get into the continuation of the interrogation in Dash to Pieces 11.4. We're interrogating, we're seeking justice, so whose head should we be in? Of course, Lucy's. um, and yeah, Lucy goes hard. That's basically the summary of this chapter.
Yeah. This is one of those chapters where I was like coming finishing 11.3, I was like, this has to be a Lucy chapter now. In fact, like to be honest, I thought that going into 11.3, like where 11.2 ended, I was like, oh, well, and then it'll be a Lucy chapter for the interrogation. But um, instead, 11.3 was an Avery chapter because 11.3 took the time to focus on like how things are put together, like the grander scheme of
Mm,
how these things are connected. So that's more of an Avery thing. And then also we saw like Edith systematically have every connection and hope stripped from her, which is also very Avery. Uh, but it's with that covered in 11.3. Now there's really a sense of okay, we're moving into the justice and the interrogation part, and of course it has to be Lucy. Um,
yeah.
and like I feel like what this chapter continues to do that 11.3 was also doing very heavily is basically start to address this concern of how do you deal fairly with someone who is abusing or using every loophole the system has.
Yeah. Um, it's a hard question. It's a hard question. But Lucy does pretty good. I mean, she goes hard in this chapter, but she does it in a way that feels very fair to me.
There's some parts where I don't agree with what she says, um, and I think Avery actually speaks up against some of them too. But
Mm,
I do like that. Like the first thing she does here is she notices she's getting heated, and she thinks about Alexander and Bristow, and she takes a step back. Like she's learnt that lesson, and then when they're talking about do they have to bind Edith, she just immediately turns to like John and the others, and she's like,
mm,
"Hey, do you think we've reached that point?"
Mm,
and listens to them. When I get the vibe John kind of says, "I don't know if we're there yet."
yeah, and so they don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
but still, like, yeah, I really like that side of her where she notices that she's getting heated and chasing punishment, and she takes the step back. It's really cool.
Yeah. um, I just want to pull out one of my favorite lines from this chapter, where as Lucy is starting to interrogate Edith, we get Edith looked up. You've destroyed my marriage. That's a distraction, Lucy said. Answer my question. Like, fuck, that's cold. The destruction of your marriage is a distraction to me in this interrogation, so let's ignore it. And it's not
Yeah,
even in the most stone cold things said to Edith this chapter.
no, that's like maybe top 5.
Yeah,
She,
it's
she gets. I'm just going to jump ahead and pull out what was my favorite one, um, which is where Edith sort of talks like, "Oh, are you gonna imprison Matthew too if
oh
he's
yeah.
implicated?" And
Oh
Lucy says, "If Matthew needs to be restrained because he's been compelled, I wouldn't inflict you on him.
yeah,
He doesn't deserve that." And like
that's
Edith flinches,
fucked.
and I was like, "Holy shit!" I thought we decided not to unravel her.
Yeah. I like this one from Verona, where she just says, all we had to do was show him a syringe, which you lost. Like, just a very simple little, we didn't do anything, okay? You fuck this yourself.
Yeah, like, and I mean that's the big thing. Is like the second Edith said to them, "You've destroyed my marriage," I was like, "Oh, fuck off!" Like,
Yeah, you destroyed your own marriage, Edith. Let's be real.
well, I know she didn't. She did build that marriage, to be fair, but it was built on foundations that were fucking rotten as hell. Like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
foundations were so rotten, even a goblin's not going to go near them. Like it was like they destroyed it, but like, come on, like it was a shit marriage.
Yeah, it was doing everyone a favor that it got tore
Yeah, yeah.
down.
Them destroying the marriage. Yeah, it is a good thing. It's hurt Matthew, and like that's the only bad part of it. Like,
Well, yeah, but I think it's worth remembering every moment that had been allowed to continue makes that hurt worse.
oh yeah, yeah, exactly. It's the same thing as like, do you tell a friend if you know their partner is cheating on them?
Yeah,
Like sort of vibes. Um like it's essentially that same ethical thing. It's just like there's definitely a part of you. It's like when Edith is feeling upset about the loss of Matthew, I was definitely coming at it from the position of good, you deserve to feel shit about this. Like
yeah,
like this is pain that should be inflicted upon you with their comments because you fucking trapped this guy in a fake relationship by poisoning him for 10 years. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's some real Dennis Reynolds level shit. Um,
um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like something that's interesting in this chapter is I did feel like I was yo-yoing a fair bit on how like there were those times where I was like, yeah, suck shit, Edith. Like, you did a terrible thing to Matthew and you deserve to feel bad about this. And then when it would turn into the more stuff like binding her and stuff, I definitely got a lot more
like sympathetic.
yeah, or like pitying her. Um, like it just felt like Walbo was this fucking puppeteer above me while I was reading this chapter. Where sometimes you get me to be like, "Yeah, fuck you, Edith, you deserve this," and then like 10 sentences later, I'd be like, "Oh, this is so sad for Edith."
I felt no compassion towards Edith in this chapter. I had no compassion left for her.
I mean, I can't blame you for that. I don't know. I still feel like I guess when you talk about stuff like binding and compelling and just like how invasive that is, it's like arguments about the death penalty for me. It's like even with all that shit, I don't know if she deserves all of that.
I don't think she deserves to die for sure, but I don't feel any sorrow that her misdeeds have caught up to her.
No, I guess I'm more thinking like the parts where I mostly started to feel for her is like the parts where they do have to sort of talk about binding her and all that and what that's going to be and like her distress at that I think is fair because yeah, I mean, does anyone deserve that and what it means? I don't know. We'll get into this. That's basically the question this chapter is asking.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Um, also worth noting out, I didn't really pick up on it last chapter, but it's pointed out Snowdrop was not the right person to send to keep an eye on Matthew. That was clearly a mistake.
Yeah, this has happened to Snowdrop a couple of times in the last arc, and then just like a bunch of times throughout the whole story. And it says you got to feel sorry for Snowdrop in situations like this because she just
She's doing her best, but yeah, it's unhelpful.
Yeah, but that's the thing, she's a nice person who does want to help, and she's just, for reasons outside of her control, just kind of shit at it for most people. Like unless it's like goblins, who would enjoy that sort of irony.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, Edith continues to be very cagey about providing answers here, and patience starts to wear quite thin.
yes. There's a point where Verona notices that Edith doesn't differentiate between a competent practitioner and an evil one.
Mm.
And then he clarifies, yes, the roads for competence and power that are available to practitioners. I can't support a powerful one because it means they've abused stuff down the line.
Does
Which
it,
is just kind
Edith?
of ironic that she's saying that to the Kenneteers, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, right? Like, the Kenneteers are the clear example that that's not the case, that that doesn't have to be the case.
Like, yeah, and again, it falls into that same trap where she's like, it feels like the big case she has for them abusing their powers is where they are right now. And again, at the end of the day, she's guilty. So
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah,
hard to
oh,
call them out on it.
I can't support practitioners being powerful because that means I can't just murder people with impunity. Oh, no.
um,
Yeah, it's a real world's tiniest violin kind of situation for me.
Yeah, yeah. I again though, like I feel like the interesting debate being brought up here, and where the Sable fits into it. I think I'm jumping ahead in my notes, but I'll just bring it up here. Like, the argument sort of comes up is in the world where Edith isn't guilty. Like, how do you make sure you're not crossing lines, but also like doing what needs to be done to stop her from hurting more people?
The Kenneteers have been doing that though by giving her a chance to justify it, giving her a chance to explain multiple times. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into it more because I can't remember what my examples are for arguing against that, but they're in here somewhere.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I guess
um,
we'll get to that. Like,
uh,
to sum up my thoughts going into it, though, if somebody can't, if somebody has, for example, murdered three innocent teenagers or been complicit in their murder and can't explain why, can't give a good reason for it, that there's no like, I can't find a situation where she's not just guilty. Like, that is guilt, regardless of what her intentions are.
uh, I mean, it can be more complicated than that. I think. Like, I don't know. Well, yeah, let's get into it. I see what you're saying, but like as the Sable brings up a point, there's ways for them to sort of coerce confessions or twist the truth. Like that's what you got to be worried about. I mean, it. We're coming into this from the perspective where we do intrinsically trust the Kenneteers,
Mm,
but like if it's Alexander who was doing this to Edith,
mm.
like I feel like I'd be a lot less willing to sort of entrust him with those abilities and powers to do things like bind her based on her not being able to answer questions because so much stuff like how you ask the question and trying to understand why she can't answer it, I feel can actually be important. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But sorry to jump back a bit. That quote I brought up about Edith not differentiating between competent and evil practitioners. The main reason I also wanted to bring that up is because, like, remember when that was like Crooked Rook? Like, that was what we,
That's what we thought Rook was going to be like.
yeah, that was sort of what we thought. Crooked Rook was a bit of a like villain with a stupidly big blind spot.
Mhm.
Um, like that was essentially
Edith.
yeah, almost exactly what I thought Crooked Rook's position was. I'm like, no, Crooked Rook isn't that dumb. It's like, yeah, actually, but no, you know what? I can believe that Edith kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's this beat as well where Edith brings up the distinction of like, well, actually, we didn't bring you in to solve the case. We brought you in to attempt to investigate. And
Ugh.
so, like, you didn't have to do all this. And it's such a bullshit
Yeah.
point for her to make because she's basically admitting she wanted them to be around to not do much and then unceremoniously get killed by her slash the other co-conspirators. So her point is effectively, well, you didn't have to investigate. You could have just come in and not done anything and then been killed. And it's just like such a stupid point.
um. Yeah, and I mean, she actually like I reckon between these two chapters, that little distinction is raised by her at least 5 times.
Mm.
Like there are so many points where Lucy will make the claim, "You asked us to investigate this," and Edith will retort, "Yeah, just investigate. We didn't want you to actually catch us." Um, And you're right. It just rings so like it's such a bullshit technicality wordplay. Like I mean, it's exactly the sort of shit that you'd be like that she's claiming that they're trying to do, and that you want to avoid prosecutors and police like the Kenneteers from doing it. She's just kind of doing it. She's the one doing it in this situation. Like it's
Yeah,
such a yeah, it's such a false sort of claim.
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
really just her.
semantically it holds up, but it like
Yeah,
by the meaning of the words, yeah.
yeah, for sure. It feels like it's her trying to get upset at them for using, like, trying to make a point that they're using bad faith arguments when they're not, but she is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it feels very Republican to me.
Yeah, no, yeah, 100%. She does have this really good move that she does here though, where um, something that has sort of come up is the Sable has come here and he's put his backing behind them, and the implication there is that if this doesn't go well, that's going to cost them.
Mm,
Um, but if it does go well, then it's good for them. And
mm,
Edith really sort of turns that on them here by sort of basically saying, "Look, I'm not going to answer something unless you bind me. So like, you don't want to buy me, but I guess look, you're either going to have to bind me or tell the Sable that you wasted his time, and that's going to cost you. Like, I don't, it's a move to really force them, or I don't know, to take back a bit of power and make things bad for them. I suppose like, it's the only move she has at this point, but um,
yeah.
turning the Sable, who is their biggest ally, into a problem, is yeah, I don't know, like powerful move.
Mm, mm, yeah. um, uh, yeah. I don't have anything to say to it. I just find Edith's arguments that she makes to be so smarmy and frustrating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's one I'd love to discuss
Mm,
because this. So basically, they have that conversation where uh, Lucy sort of asks, "Oh, what would you tell us if you were compelled to tell us stuff?" And he's like, "That defeats the whole point. I'm not going to do that." And Lucy sort of, says, "I'm trying to find a course that isn't binding you. So just tell us what you would say if we bound you, and then we won't have to do anything brutal like binding you." And Edith sort of retorts, "Oh, this is brutish enough." And I think, again, I'm going to have to side with Edith on this one. Is like, if you're hanging over her head, the idea of if you don't tell us the stuff anyway, we will have to bind you. Like, is that any different to just binding her? Like, using it as a threat is giving it the same power. Like, you know what I mean?
mm. I mean, my counterpoint to that is that I think binding is bad, not because it's forcing them to give the answer, but because it has inherent, like, lingering effects, right? That's my thought, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, actually binding her does other things, and there's more to it. But I think she has a point that it's kind of close enough where, like, Lucy is at this point sort of saying, "We'll bind you unless like you you give us the stuff that we'll get out of binding you anyway." Like, it just
Mm.
I don't know. Like, yeah, it's kind of like, I'll yeah, I'll torture you unless you just tell me what you'd tell me if I was going to torture you. And so you're still using torture as the incentive, which is still sort of validating torture as a method. Like I
Yeah.
think this is one of those points where Lucy is sort of saying, "Oh, we don't want to do binding," but she's also using it as the way to get the information, which kind of means she's basically already there.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, that's another point against Edith, because in my mind, Edith has had ample opportunity to resolve this situation without any coercion, and she's refusing. Lucy is not the one escalating this. Edith is the one escalating it,
Yeah. Um. I no. I get what you mean. Like,
and
this is sort of Lucy.
that feels like a slimy point to make. But I will point out we're in a universe where we know for sure that Edith could tell the truth, like, and she's refusing to. Like, in our world, I think that's a point that doesn't hold up because
Yeah.
it's one that's so easily able to be abused. But we exist in a world where Edith could solve this unequivocal, undeniably solve it for them, and she's refusing.
Yeah, like that is an interesting thing to this. Like, I guess like, just sort of back to the original point. I guess I'm just sort of saying that, like, Lucy making the claim that she's trying to avoid binding but still using it as the threat, to me feels like you've crossed the line of, like, is binding acceptable kind of already.
Mm.
So I guess I would argue against Lucy claiming that binding is too far for them if she's already trying to use it as a threat. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, I guess to your point about like that is like a really interesting part of this because like I saw discussions in the Discord and stuff earlier today as I was sort of catching up, which were talking about like the topic of like the Fifth Amendment came up here because it's obviously feels super relevant to a lot of Edith's non-answering questions here.
mm,
And there was argument about how applicable as a metaphor the Fifth Amendment is because
mm,
like Edith will literally instantaneously die if she breaks this oath. So um it's not just like she's choosing to stay silent. She made that choice in the past and she can't undo it.
mm,
Um, but yeah, this idea that like should the Fifth Amendment exist in the other verse sort of came up because the argument was a big part of the Fifth Amendment comes back to apparently like, and I'm quoting people on Discord here. I'm not a
a
USA
constitutional lawyer,
person.
yeah.
Yeah. My understanding is like yeah, like a big part of it sort of comes to agency, but also this ability to like stop, bad police extorting like false confessions and stuff.
Mm,
And then the interesting thing in this universe is like if Edith can tell the truth, or sorry, has to tell the truth, is that possible? Like
mm,
you, you think in theory you should eventually be able to boil most things down to yes or no questions to the point where you can determine the truth.
yeah.
Um, and I think the interesting point that maybe doesn't get raised so easily in Edith's case because she is guilty is I don't know that that is actually true in this world. Like I think if you wanted to get rid of the Fifth Amendment for others, for me, which I don't know if others in Canada have a Fifth Amendment equivalent, right? But like if you want to be able to bind others and compel them to answer you, I feel like there has to be a lot of rules and restrictions around what questions you're allowed to ask when you do that.
What's an example of a question that shouldn't be allowed?
Um, wait, so just as an example, like
Mhm.
questions should have to be like almost. There's better ways of phrasing this. I'm not the person to come up with the final phrasing, so there will
Yeah.
be holes in this. But like it has to be essentially solely to do with the case that involved the binding and the forced compelling, like
Mm,
stopping it from turning into fishing expeditions to find other shit to punish them for
mm.
or to get information about other people. Like it should sort of be this thing where, yeah, I'd almost limit it to strict like yes or no questions. Like were you involved? Like the sort of questions the Kenneteers were kind of asking in their initial interviews, where it's sort of like, can you force some of these questions to be boiled down to yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously true that there's not gonna be ever a system that you can set up that will remain undeniably fair
Yeah,
forever for all cases, right? Like, that's
yeah,
just the case. Uh, so, there has to be some kind of constant arbiter of that, and I think that's fair enough. Uh, I think this is a situation where it's pretty clear that uh, Edith should have to answer some questions at the very least.
yeah. But again, that comes down to in like that's in this case, and so like I agree. I would want a system where in this situation, if Edith is being like this, the Kenneteers maybe have the option to compel a handful of answers out of her. But I think if you extract to the general case and you picture the other practitioners out there, people like Alexander and Bristow,
Mm,
I think that sort of thinking really warrants like making sure that there are restrictions on what the practitioners are allowed to like when they're allowed to do it. Like I think you're right. The Kenneteers kind of their own volition went and made sure they had the reasoning and they were doing this as right as they could.
mm.
But like I want that shit set in stone and I want limitations on what questions they'd be allowed to compel answers to
Yeah, sure. I mean,
and
maybe
that
the
sort of thing.
answer is something like what the Kenteers have here of like must be checked with a jury of their other peers,
Yeah.
e.g., John and Tash.
Well, and like the judges, they're right
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Like
true. Although I
they're
don't
meant to be
trust them.
arbiters of truth or whatever. Like they should
Yeah.
be they could also be the arbiters of like, is that question relevant? And the Sable does that at times, but like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like these are just sort of the questions these chapters bring up. Is like in this case, a lot of this stuff feels warranted, but how do you build that system so that the others aren't being like abused like they are now? Like how
Mhm,
do we make it so that the Kenneteers can do what they do here and do it the right way, and other practitioners can't abuse it as easily.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's going to be a systematic answer to that.
No, exactly. Well, I think that's the thing. There has to. That's the impossible thing with this stuff is there has to be discretion built in somewhere because cases
Yeah.
will be unique and have
Yeah.
special circumstances.
And just situations change over time, right?
Yeah, but then the flip side of giving people discretion is that they'll abuse it.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you both give people the discretion to be fair to circumstances and also make sure they can't abuse that discretion? Like, I think that's the impossible balance to strike.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It is an impossible one. Before we circle around this question forever, I guess we should move on. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, Edith admits that there are vows that she has sworn that prevent her from answering questions, and this dance begins of asking her questions that she can answer. Tempers flare, but Edith eventually starts to play ball.
Yep. Fun little subtle burn at Edith here is when Lucy turns her sight on, she notices two new blades at Edith's hands that are broken and are piercing her hands, and there's dark bandages that they're touching. Like basically, her blood is on her own hands. Is like the vibe that Lucy's sight is giving her here.
She's
Um,
stabbing her, and yeah,
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like I feel like this is Lucy's sight, sort of being like, Lucy, oh, this is kind of her own fault. Like basically.
yeah. Um, so fun confirmations from here. One, Edith didn't intentionally sick Chloe on Lucy, which is nice to know.
Yeah, it
Um,
felt like a very bold play at the time, so I'm glad that was not something she consciously did.
yes, and the bigger one, Edith didn't smudge that diagram, uh,
Yeah.
which I think we kind of suspected. I mean, I kind of suspected it would have been a bit too clean if she had, but
Yeah, it was that was too obvious, right? Yeah.
yeah. So who could it have been? I mean, the effectively the strongest suspects are Guillerme and Marisica, but by my thoughts from the chapter, Marisica was still kind of outside and not in the immediate area at that point, right? So
Well,
Guillerme
like
seems like the other.
she
Mm,
showed up not that much. Like it's very possible she was hiding in the wings at that
yes,
time and when no one was looking crap by the door. I think she's absolutely a possibility.
but I don't know. I mean, Guillerme was right there.
Yeah. I mean, I can do the mental dance of which side of the ferry's on for fucking days. Like,
Sure, fair enough.
yeah, like I agree. Like you're right. Like Guillaume, I want him to be good, but like he seems good, which means that's the trick. But then that's the trick. But then that's the trick,
Mm, yeah.
etc. Um, I mean the goblins were there. That's the only other people. Oh no, she said it would fuck up with the goblins. So
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. The fairies seem like the best candidates because it's not going to be like John or Nibble. So,
yes.
there's actually like a third confirmation here that I also wanted to call out, which is just that
Mm,
like in a few of her lines, Edith basically makes it clear that like as far as she is aware, she is like a proper co-conspirator.
yeah, she's a full co-conspirator. There's no, as far as she knows, there's no secrets being kept from her.
Yeah, and obviously like and Marcy brought this up in 10.z. To some extent, she's presumably a bit of a pawn of Marisica's.
Mm,
But I guess just after 10.z, like again, I feel like there are a lot of people talking about this and like almost treating Edith like a patsy.
mm,
Um, and I mean, she's the one who's fallen first, and she is like to some extent. But like, I felt like the way people were talking about it was underselling what she makes clear here, which is that like she wasn't tricked into this or held under someone's thumb. Like she was part of the decision making process. Like as far as she's aware, she had a hand in deciding to and making the hungry choir.
yeah,
Like she, even if like Marisica sort of is playing her to some degree, we can't escape the fact that like Edith was making choices here and doing a lot of this.
yeah, she made decisions, undeniably. Yeah. Um, so there's also a moment where Sable just kind of has a bit of a one-on-one with Edith. Uh, he goes
Yeah.
in, he smokes it up, he has some unknown conversation with her, and then he emerges, and she is slightly more willing to answer questions. And it's not questioned. It's not.
No.
Yeah, it just feels like, if in 4 chapters' time we find out the Sable Prince has been behind it all, we'll be able to look back and find out what was said between the two of them at this point, effectively, is my thoughts on it.
Yeah, like, you're right, this part is super weird because yeah, you're right, the weirdest part is nobody really questions what he did, like,
Yeah.
he goes in and covers her in smoke, and then basically, like, afterwards, his direct quote about, like, what sort of happened is, "She had no defense even with her word protected," which feels like it's giving this vibe of he was able to create a space where she could, like, kind of break the oath and not suffer for it, like,
Mm,
it's within his jurisdiction to say, "Oh, I can create this space where that oath no longer holds, so you can answer this one question."
mm,
Which raises a whole bunch of questions about why he hasn't done that in other situations. Um, as well as just like, when he leaves, Edith is like traumatized. Like the description Lucy gives of her is like, her cigarette wasn't in her mouth and she looked kind of stunned or something. Like it's
yeah.
just
Like what did he do?
yeah, Edith is not comfortable, and it's just like again, like Lucy called out earlier in this chapter, like we kind of skipped over it, but there's a part where Lucy's like, the practice always forces analogies," which is like meta commentary on the meta commentary of this story. Um, but it's impossible not to look at what the Sable did here and draw that police procedural trope of like where the person turns the cameras off in the interrogation room and takes it too far.
Hmm.
Like that that feels like almost explicitly what this is.
Yeah. It's
A
weird.
and it's yeah, the weirdest part is just how nobody calls it out. Like, the Sable just does it, and everyone just acts like that was okay.
Mm,
It's bizarre, and yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, again, you're right. This feels like one of those things where it could come back to bite us very easily because he sort of gives that implication that it was like, "Oh, I created a safe space where she could do it," but the way she looks when he comes out of it, I can't trust it.
hmm. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. Another
Um
thing to file away in your big list of clues that we'll come back to when the story's
If only I
over.
was actually keeping that sort of list. I'm so jealous of Malia and Jenny's ability to actually write down the shit they say they're going to track
Yeah.
rather than just saying it in episodes like this and then
And then not doing
like
it.
half a year later being like, "Hey, did we call that out or not?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish we were keeping our own pale predictor.
Too late now.
um but yeah, so this is really the part where like I feel like I started to get what the Sable was doing here cuz like as well as just like he had that vibe right from the start of like pushing to get a conviction. And it sort of made me realize like literally in the story he is the stand-in for the system. Like
Mm,
the Kenneteers have brought him because even though they're trying to do this their own way,
mm,
the one thing they want to turn to is to be able to say, "Hey, look, like the system agrees that we're doing this the right way."
yeah.
Like he is here to put the existing system's weight behind it, and like that's the thing though, because the Kenneteers are uncomfortable with the system. Like so much of what they're doing in this story is to fight against the worst parts of it, and so like the
Yeah.
Sable is here, I think, to kind of be this embodiment of like how there's this almost paradox for the Kenneteers where they need to lean on the system to give their actions weight, but at the same time, like leaning on the system means putting up with some of its bullshit. Like it's gonna take Edith into a smoky interrogation room and fucking traumatize her. It's gonna like demand that they either get a conviction or pay a price for bringing him in at all.
Mm,
It's like yeah, they fight against him and stuff, and obviously, like he makes that comment at the end that we're going to talk about that you've alluded to already. But like what he's doing here is sort of representing what leaning on the system like that. That just means they're bringing some of the baggage with it, and it's like this is that other impossible question where when you want to fundamentally change some parts of the system, how do you do that in a way that isn't just like tossing out the whole thing? Like how do you bring the system with you and bring the legitimate parts of it, but get rid of the crap when that system is designed to work as a unit.
it's an impossible question.
Yeah, and
This
like yeah,
story
I
is
like
filled with impossible
yeah,
questions.
it is. But like yeah, like, I was amazed at like that final realization of like oh that's what the Sable is here to do. He's sort of like he is the system, and that means he's here
Yeah.
to push the system's agenda, which is
Yeah.
like the whole
Which
thing
is
with
the
the Steel
thing we're
Swordman. Like
rallying against.
and he wants the easy conviction. Like the thing is, he feels like he's doing that terrible thing that you see in a lot of police procedurals, where it's like, oh, we need the conviction, so you got to really push for it.
Yeah.
Like he's got this agenda of wanting that, and that means he's going to take it too far. And and he's trying to make it really simple. Everything needs to just be it's true or untrue, and then
Yeah.
prove it or you haven't proved it, and
Yeah.
that's some of the baggage they're bringing with them.
Yeah, he's bringing with him an unnuanced and like black and white perspective.
Yeah, and yeah, like for the Kenneteers, it's like you want to get away from that, but also to have done this here, you needed legitimacy, and the system is what
Yeah,
can provide
yeah,
that. Like, how do you balance those two things? It's yeah, I think overall they do pretty good here, but it's tough.
yeah, definitely. Um, I want to pull out another quote here because I think it's important. Um, Edith says, kind of in her own defense, I was born first from a pyromaniac, selfish, broken, desperate. And then John interrupts. Is it John? I think it's John.
Yeah.
Says, you were also born from vigil, remembrance, friendship, love, and you seem to have let that part of you slip to irrelevance, Edith. And I just, I like keeping
Smack.
this quote here so we don't let ourselves think Edith is a product of her creation or her composition or give her any easy outs. She is morally culpable for the things that she has done. She chose to be what she is.
Yeah, because something that has come up in this story is, the whole thing. Like, oh, some of the others could break their oaths to protect you if they end up in a situation where that's just in their nature. Like, if Chloe goes rabid and eats you, that isn't breaking the oath because it's not like something
Yeah,
she's
what can she
choosing to
do?
do.
Yeah.
Um, so like we are in a world where sometimes like there are situations where the others, it is out of their control and it's just their nature. And Edith tries to claim this is sort of it for her. And yeah, you're right. John just slaps it down, especially because like in Ted.Z we saw Matthew again. He put so much effort into making that not the case for her. Matthew turned Edith into someone where that just was not really true for her anymore. He nurtured her. He helped her complete like develop more depth, and he got her to the point where she was in Edith's body and she had this ability to make her own decisions. And this is the decision that she made, basically. And she essentially admits that earlier when she sort of says it was like a decision she made. So it's just like, yeah, you're right. Like, she can't hide behind that excuse that, oh, I'm an other and it's just in my nature to be like this. It's like, no, you betrayed the guy who helped you get to the point where that actually was not true anymore.
um, John does some good work here.
Yeah.
Good work by John, coming in and shutting down a lot of this bullshit.
Yeah, and also just like you really feel the emotion of it, and that's really true of both of these chapters. Like everything in them, like there's been so much discussion about what happened here, and I think it's not just because it raises the ethical questions we've done circles around all episode, but it's just there's so much. The writing does such a good job of carrying the emotions. Like the way John comes into this is when he's basically like, I thought we were friends. Like you've hurt me, you've hurt Matt, you've hurt Yolda. Like you didn't let Yolda die. Like it just,
Yeah,
there's been a million words to get to this point, and I think the story really delivers on having the emotion of Edith come out as guilty, like really hit us.
yeah. It's you really feel the impact of it, huh?
Yeah. And like as I sort of said before, for me there were points where I was like, I felt sorry for Edith, and then there are other points where I was like, God, I hate you, Edith. Like eh, this story has spent a million words getting us to understand these characters and know different sides of them, and then it just uses it in these chapters so well.
Yeah, the payoff of John's I, I guess disgust with Edith
Yeah.
for being so willing to do something so horrible to preserve her own means and do it at the expense of Yolda, who I mean is literally the representation of an innocent, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty on the nose horrific.
Yeah, and John has been like so content to sit in the sidelines, and we know he's a good person.
Yeah, and we
And so
know he
just
has personally made sacrifices for
yeah,
these situations, and it's the exact same sacrifices Edith is so unwilling to make.
exactly. So just having him come out from the wings where he likes to be and just go up to him and be like, fuck you and everything that you've done,
Yeah,
really hits.
yeah,
Um
yeah,
uh, yeah, especially like one last detail from what she gives us here. One of the details she drops is like the more she helped Matthew and like, when they were together and his self would get stronger, the less grip she'd have on him. So then she had to like start injecting him with more doom so it would have more control over him. so he'd stay with her. And like that's the part where, at least until this point, I had believed Edith when she said she wanted she wanted to help Matthew.
Mhm.
Because this is the point where she's basically admitting, as he started to get better, he would leave me, and I chose for him
Yeah.
to be with me rather than better.
Yeah.
Um, and like that just undermines that one last shred of legitimacy that she sort of had in her actions, where she claimed to love Matthew. Because like it's that thing you brought up with the type of love she had. Like it was a possessive love.
It's pure selfish. There's no selflessness to it.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
A-
yeah.
and to take a step back from any of the characters we talked about this chapter, there's a part where Verona takes the lead here.
Mm,
And I just wanted to call that out because she comes in with this really like bright, happy vibe. Like she sort of walks up, she's like, "Hey, Edith," and she's trying to be very casual and conversational. And
mm.
like, why do you reckon she's doing this? Because like it's obviously it. Why?
I wonder even if it's a choice and not just Verona's default reaction to troubling emotions of just pushing it all down.
I I wondered that, but I don't know. Like it
It
just
does seem so on over the top.
yeah. Like the only other thing I could think is she trying to like fuck with Edith? Like was
Yeah,
this to piss her off?
yeah.
Because like there's no better way to tick off someone who you've hurt and who's pissed off at you than act like you don't have a care in the world. Because the one thing, like if somebody's angry at you, the one thing they want is for you to feel pain. So acting like you don't.
Mm,
Like Verona acting like this isn't bothering her. It felt like more than just her usual coping mechanisms. So yeah, the only thing I can think is that she was just trying to piss Edith off.
mm.
I don't know. Hopefully we get a Verona chapter soon and she'll think back on this moment and explain it to us. Because that sometimes happens. And I like that. I
Yeah,
like it when Wildbow just explains things I didn't get sometimes.
yeah, that would be nice. So yeah, the Kenneteers continue their questioning, but the new Kennet others arrive. The perimeter has fallen. Edith's gone. Matthew is stepping down from the leadership. Things need to happen. A new leader needs to be crowned. Co-conspirators need to be found, and things are worsening as usual.
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot to dig into here.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, first of all, everyone is here except for Chloe and Charles, which
Including Rook.
yeah. Obviously Chloe not being here makes sense.
Yeah.
She's recovering. Uh Charles not being here like is definitely an excusable absence because like it is believable that he might not be invited or that everyone would forget him because his karma's shit, but
When was the last time we saw Charles?
a fair while ago. I mean, he's popped up, but like
I mean, he was in obviously the flashbacks with Matthew and Edith.
yeah, but like in terms of in Kennet, I don't think we've seen him outside of the other meetings, which is why it stood out to me that he's not at this one. Like, as much as he is just there, like, forsworn piece of shit who doesn't get a say,
Mm,
he's had votes in the past. Like, remember there was that it was like way back in Arc 3 because there was the joke that he gets a vote because Jerry Pop did, and he's like, oh great.
mm.
Um so yeah, like I don't know. That's just one of those
I'm really
things.
struggling to remember the last time we saw him now.
It was when he was talking about the barrier. It was like early Arc 9.
Right.
He gave them, but again, it was in one of these meetings. Like I think
Yeah.
outside of the meetings, the last time we saw him get one-on-one time with like any of the Kenneteers would have been, unless I'm forgetting one, when he talked to Avery as they were fighting Daniel
Yeah,
in Kennet Arc
that's
5.
the one that I'm flashing back to as well,
Yeah.
which is
Um
pretty worrying considering that those meetings also would have the other co-conspirators around.
yeah, like I'm still clinging on to this idea that if Charles is involved, he is like under the
He is a
shoe of
pawn, yeah.
yeah. Like, I don't believe he would be like Edith, where he's somebody who had deals he made with Marisica and whoever else
No,
to
he
get
seems
stuff.
nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and yeah, just he sort of struck me as a victim. So I'm still holding on to this fact that if he is involved, it's because they're threatening him more than they are enticing him. But
Mm,
you know, absences like this stand out when that's how I'm thinking of him.
yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I mean the other thing as well, since they're the only two missing, this is effectively a full like council meeting.
Yeah. Um, and Sable is here as well to add some gravity to the situation, which is very nice. You can kind of see how if Sable wasn't around, things could have really gone off the rails.
Yeah, and for like a number of times in this chapter, Lucy has been like, "Why is he still here? Like, we've gotten what we need out of him. Why is he
Mm.
sticking around?" And this is where he sort of reveals to us and to her, "I was sticking around to make sure that the legitimacy I lent to you went to the rest of the town as well."
Yes, was conveyed effectively.
Um, which is like, this is one of the good parts of leaning on the system is
Yep.
like that legitimacy was allowed to carry through, and they go essentially unchallenged on this.
Yeah.
Um, so that's nice, I guess.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, as you mentioned, Rook is here, which I just love because, like, her just bluntness and assholery to the practitioners is now just very fun because we know that it's at least largely bullshit.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Um, so obviously, with everyone here, and we need a new leader. Rook and Toadswallow are the candidates, which makes obvious sense. And I'd be
Yeah.
pretty happy with either of them from what we know. I kind of am curious who you would vote for of these two.
Oh, that's a good question.
I would, I think, vote for Toady.
I mean, oh god, I'm doing that thing, where like as soon as I'm about to say Toadswallow, I'm like, oh no, but it'd have to be Rook. And then when I go to say Rook, I'm like, no, actually, I can't. Oh, I know I just said in our last episode that Toadswallow would be like my first choice for Kennet Familiar.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'd actually vote for Rook.
Interesting.
Um, shit, like I don't know. I might abstain. But yeah, so your team Toadswallow?
Yeah, I just obviously Rook has Mrs. Endorsement, and that means a lot, but I
Yeah,
still
true.
don't fully trust her. Whereas Toadswallow, like, I don't feel like I accurately know Rook's
Platform.
motivations. I even don't really feel like I accurately know Mrs. motivations to that extent. But Toadswallow, I feel like I know his motivations, and I can accept them.
uh Now we're in a two-party voting system.
I mean, I can't think of anyone I would vote for over them. I don't think.
Well,
I mean,
I
like,
mean, the answers for who I would vote over them are like John or Matt again, or like people who
yeah,
don't want it. So it's
yeah,
like
those
just
obviously aren't tenable solutions.
well, it's the same. It's like a less worse version of the BHI dilemma, where it's
Yeah,
like often the people we need as the leaders are the ones who, for various reasons, can't. Um, Especially with John, he can't take this office because he's about to take another bigger one.
yeah.
In theory. Um, but yeah, I mean, I get like one interesting thing is like Rook and Toadswallow are the candidates. It's kind of worth pointing out to an extent, Lucy and John are the ones who made them candidates. Like there wasn't, put up your hand if you want the role thing. It was like
Yeah,
cast
true.
your votes, and Lucy and John cast theirs straight away because, hilariously, Rook is telling them to piss off. Um, which again, they use this like thing where she like wants them to go to like extort a future meeting out of her, which was like I wouldn't even be surprised if that was planned in advance.
Mm,
But it's like a great excuse for them to like secretly meet up and actually trade notes.
mm,
Um, but yeah, sorry. So, yeah, like John is the one who sort of nominates Toadswallow by voting for him first, and Lucy does the same for Rook. And I think they, as you said, they probably are the two obvious candidates. Like we've talked about Toadswallow almost being a de facto leader a number of times in the past, and Rook is the one who takes charge when they come here, and she's obviously a natural sort of
mm,
campaigner,
mm.
um, at least, or at least that's the persona she's been using the whole time she's in Kennet. But like technically, there's no reason everyone couldn't just vote John after the Kenneteers leave.
True,
Um,
true.
I'd be very surprised if a third party candidate won.
Yeah,
But technically, there's no limits on who's like. I mean, technically, a Kenneteer could win.
that would be
Uh,
pretty wild.
It's not going to happen, but like,
Yeah.
oh no, you know what? Technically, Miss could win.
Um.
Is there any reason Miss can't come back now
I,
and just take that thing? Like
huh. Yeah, I guess it depends. Like the thing keeping Miss out was Matthew and Edith in charge could turn
Monty on.
things bad. Yeah.
So if Rook wins, or if somebody else wins, and they say, "Hey, let's not put Monty on the barrier so Miss can come back," like what's like,
The
yeah,
problem is they're probably going to need Monty on the barrier right now.
yeah, well, yes, that's the big problem. Is like I think that was the really smart thing about like bringing Monty in like this is like keeping Miss out is far from the only reason he's useful on the barrier.
Mm,
That's just a little side perk that took us forever to notice.
mm.
Um,
Who do you think's going to win the vote?
Yeah, I won't read out the whole. You can see the fucking I've basically gone through
Yeah.
and figured out everyone who's going to have a vote and who I think they'd vote for.
Yeah.
I think Toad Swallow's
But
just got it in the bag.
I know you haven't put down John and the Kenneteers votes here,
Oh no, well because they
which is
voted two
two
each.
each. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of went forward assuming that because of the momentum Toad Swallow and Rook already have, both by being the most sensible candidates and by having 2 votes already each,
Hmm.
I kind of assumed that most of the votes are going to be for them. So I kind of only really thought for each group, who would they choose out of those two?
Yeah.
Technically, some of these votes could get lost to third parties or whatever, but like based on how many gimmies I think Toad Swallow has, I
Yeah.
think
There are
even if
4 goblin votes that he gets effectively for
exactly,
free, right?
yeah, because all the new goblins count as 1 vote, so that'll almost certainly go his way. And then Cherry, Blunt, and Gash, I'd be shocked if they didn't vote for Toad Swallow.
Yeah.
Whereas like Rook's gimmies are sort of like
Less sure.
Alpy.
Mm.
And then I think like so because the all the new others are also 1 vote, so that's like Chloe, Nibble, Jabba, Liz, Monty, Sig,
Yeah.
Tash,
There's
Ken,
enough
Rook.
of them in there that would vote for Rook,
Yeah,
presumably.
I think that vote would go to Rook. I think Alpy would. The fairies would be the other two you think would go for Rook, although fairy, like
Yeah, who can say? And if theirs
we
don't go for Rook, it just clinches Toad's victory, I guess.
yeah, and like Guillerme, like we saw he had a bit of a vibe with Toad Swallow in Toad Swallow's interlude.
Yeah.
Like I could see Guillerme shocking everyone and voting for the goblin.
Yeah.
Um, but the other vote here, the one that I didn't feel landed pretty hard one way or the other was really Matthew. Um,
Mm.
a- my first thought for him is he might just abstain. I don't think he's really in the position to give a shit.
Yeah.
But I think he'd vote Toad Swallow. I think Rook has been antagonistic towards him and Edith on purpose, and Matt has turned to Toad Swallow for advice in the past.
Yeah.
Toad Swallow is an institution in the town.
Yeah.
Um,
Sounds like Toadie's got it.
yeah, so my money would be on Toad edging it out. But that's like I want to say 65% odds I put
Mm.
on him.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you thinking?
No, I agree. Toad sounds good to me. I mean, like the fact that there are 4 votes that he gets out of the bag is such a good start. The only way I can
Yeah.
see him not winning is if Cherry, Blunt, and Gash votes don't go for him, and maybe this will be where the kind of goblin allegiances kind of start to unfold. But it's hard to imagine it not going to Toadie.
Yeah,
He'd be my pick.
Yeah, like they almost have an equal number of gimme votes, but like Toad Swallows feel more secure
Yeah.
than Rooks to me. And then the couple of potential swing voters that I can sort of see, I feel like would lean Toad. So it just feels like the odds are in his favor.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see. I mean, I don't know if we'll see. I mean, I guess it depends where we go from here, but we may not find out for a while. I mean, presumably 11.5 is going to be a bit of a cathartic bash the shit out of Ghosts chapter. For at least the first half.
Yeah, get some more practice beating up on spirits just in case Edith makes a return.
I mean, it definitely had the vibe. Like the vibe I had as the Kenneteers were sort of leaving is like, oh, these are shitty, meaningless ghosts. So like, and we're all kitted up for war. Emotions are running high. Like we can vent by just beating the shit out of some ghosts. It's
Yeah.
probably not going to be that simple. It never is in Pale, but like I can't help but feel that the vibe going into this is just a little bit. Let's vent some of this anger and frustration at what just went down by
Yeah.
taking it out on echoes who don't matter as much.
Yeah, for sure. But that's the end of our chapters. Now, it's worth pointing out there's no extra material this week, and so nothing to discuss there. But we do have some predictions that were left by the community in our Pale Predictor form.
Yeah.
I've put out a prediction by JSO. I like this theory. Let me pull it out. So here's the prediction. Crooked Rook sent the bag on his face other, who I think we can all just refer to as Bagface, to rough up the girls as an impetus to make the BHI conflict more bloodthirsty. Because this was...
So just to make sure I'm thinking of the right person, this was the one that Avery fought.
Yeah, that like had some
like
weird like speed up, slow down, kind of touch the Red Finch vibe.
And it was as they were dropping the other Kenneteers off, right?
Yes.
Sorry, not the other Kenneteers, the other Kennet others.
Yes.
Off, yeah.
But yeah, so effectively, the Bagface other has a few things that in common with Rook, e.g., covered face. Put Avery and Co into a series of shrinking boxes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
might be a good representation of why Miss was unhappy with the kind of Rook's methods around certain things. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily fully on board with it, but it's got enough kind of logical beats to it that I think it's worth calling out in case it ends up being true, so Jaso can get some prediction points.
Yeah, I do quite like it because that baghead kind of came out of nowhere. We had no idea who sent it, and then it just fell off the radar. Like
Yeah.
I'd pretty much forgotten about it until JSO brought it up, and that is something Wildbow is very good at is
Yep.
throwing balls up in the air and then distracting us, and they come crashing down when we've totally forgotten they're up there. And
It's a real misdirection kind of magic trick vibe that Wobbo
yeah, and
effectively pulls off.
like Baghead just went unexplained, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Especially for someone who felt kind of out of place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see this being true. Like it's a great pick to go back and think about. Hey, we never found out what that guy's deal was.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we should have started a thing that's just dangling threads, but we haven't. So if
Yeah,
anyone has a dangling threads document, feel free to link us.
yeah, yeah. It's that sort of thing. I always wish I was better at doing at the start of the story. I remember thinking this about the same stage in Pact,
Yeah.
where it was like, God, I wish I'd kept better track of my predictions and what questions hadn't been answered yet.
Mm.
You think we would have learned our lesson?
No, we never will.
um, okay, so I've got a prediction here from Lapsed Classicist,
Hmm.
who basically sort of their prediction is at the end of Pale, when the Carmine crisis is resolved, Avery will decide to go and live with her mum in Thunder Bay. Um, so basically, their reasoning behind this is, she'll get to leave this small town of Kennet, um, which one of her motivations when she awoke was to go see new places.
Mm.
We know Kennet does not have any relationship opportunities for her. So, getting out of Kennet is good for her in terms of like finding a partner. Um, and then, Sheridan is probably the sibling she's actually the closest to right now. And
Mm.
Sheridan's going to Thunder Bay. Um, and, just like being at home with just her dad, Grumble, Kerry, and Declan. Like, fuck that. Um, so yeah, and especially with her path stuff, like, she's never really too far away as long as she's got access to the paths.
Yeah,
Um,
I can see it. It makes sense.
yeah, there's like a bit more, but like, yeah, I like this, but it also made me think of like an interesting point, which is like, what is Avery's concept of home? Like, I don't know that she necessarily well, yeah, because she, like Lucy and Verona definitely both are people who like need to be able to have that space that is theirs and stuff. Whereas like
Mm.
Avery's never had that. She's kind of ever since that conversation with Fernanda, kind of locked herself in on this like arrivals and departures person. Like, is she the sort to have a home like that? Like the closest we've seen her really talk about is that time she mentioned her domain, which was just going to have like open doors to a bunch of paths. Like I don't like. I guess living with her mom's maybe is something she'll have to do because she's still like a 13-year-old girl. But just thinking forward to like when she's an adult, is she the kind of person who's even going to own a house, or is she just going to bounce around?
Yeah. I,
Like, reminds me of Lucy's Aunt Heather, but like that sort of person who never really settled.
yeah, just kind of nomadic, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I find it hard to conceptualize whether we just feel like these three characters, or I guess mainly Avery and Verona, don't feel like they have a solid conception of a place that they would settle down in, or if it's just like, does anyone when they're 13? You know?
Oh, yeah, that's true. But like, Verona is the sort of person who I can see once she figures that out, having a space and making it
Mm,
her own, and
mm,
not necessarily it being a domain that she commits to for life. But I think she is the sort of person where when she gets space, she does settle into it and make it her own. Like her big problem has been that her dad's house was not that.
yeah, true.
Um, Whereas like Avery just doesn't strike me as that sort of person. I don't see her as someone who has anything more than a kind of like home base, which is just where she keeps shit she can't carry on her and is a bed that she knows she can get to, but like, she's not the sort to stay at home. Like, Verona, she'll make a home and she'll sit in there and do shit in it all the time. Avery's gonna be in there a lot less.
Mm, yeah. Well, this is the kind of prediction that we're not going to get to find out until the epilogue, so
Yeah.
we'll put a pin in it until then, I suppose.
But yeah, well, so I suppose that's it for our predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Friendly reminder: we are running a discussion question. So that'll end next episode. So get your answers in within
In
the
the next
next,
few days, yeah.
well, yeah, a few days by the time this episode comes out because it's not coming out for a while.
Yeah.
But that question is: what's your opinion on Sylvia now that we've spent some more time with her? Is she a good mum, or can she be?
Mm. Yeah, I'm very eager to see responses to this one.
We've already got some very good ones.
Yeah.
People on both sides too, which is like that's the
That's the
sign
dream for a
that we
discussion
have a good
question.
discussion question is when people are sitting on either side.
Yeah. But yeah, you can leave your answers to that discussion question in our discussion thread, which we linked in the show notes down below. Also, leave your thoughts there on these chapters or just the show in general.
Yeah. You can also hit us up on Twitter. We are at Pale Reflectcast.
Yes.
That's right. We finally changed it.
Whoa.
So yeah, go there. There's live reads, there's announcements, there's all sorts of great stuff. There's memes.
Yep. Classic memes.
Check it out. I know that memes are a scarcity on the internet, but you can
Yeah.
find them on our Twitter.
If you're having trouble finding memes online, you should know our Twitter page is the place that originates all the memes.
Yeah. They all start with us.
They all start with us, yeah. If you want more shows on the Duff Media Network, you can go to duffmedia.com. I'll call out the newest episode of the Duffcast, which is on In Bruges, which was my favorite movie for a long, long, long time. And a real fun discussion with Scott and Matt and Michael, special guest. So good episode. If people want to check that one out, I would endorse.
Yeah, Michael always brings a great
A great chaotic
extra
vibe.
angle.
Yeah.
To the discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other big shout out we need to do is Kingslingers has just started season 2.
Yes.
So now they're covering the not Dark Tower Stephen King books. They started with Salem's Lot.
Well, I think it's I haven't confirmed this because I did not finish all the Dark Tower stuff, but it seems to me like the stories they're going through are all the ones that feature characters who showed up in the Dark Tower series from other Stephen King works.
Yes. Yeah, so I don't think they're doing like all the other Stephen King books. At least season 2 is sticking to the ones that like crossed over in the Dark Tower and stuff.
Yeah.
I think. I think I got even less far into the Dark Tower than you did, but I mean, I'm excited that I'm probably gonna jump in and listen to some of Salem's Lot because obviously, we've both read that one and liked it, and I'm keen to see.
We did it for Media MD. I brought it to you. One of our earlier episodes, in fact.
I mean, in Bruges as well. If
That's true. I forgot that.
So get your own media.
Yeah, God. Now,
Matt
and
Scott.
they're doing fucking Gore Verbinski. Speaking of, like, come on.
God,
they just copy all our ideas. Those two,
especially, or can you do it worse if you can? I mean, actually, I suppose it's probably hypocritical for us in this podcast to claim they're stealing our ideas.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, Elliot.
Anyway, if you like Matt and Scott, or if you like us, support either side in this now vicious war by heading to patreon.com.
Doof Media Civil War, it's coming. Go to patreon.com/doofmedia and support the network. While you're on Patreon, why not head to Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow, because he's the person who has created the Otherverse and deserves all of your coin as a reward.
Yes. So with that, we'll see you. Well, I guess for everyone listening to this, it'll be in less than a week for the next 2 chapters.
Yeah, see you then.